And I've said to the kids, if you do what you say you're going to do, when you said you're going to do it, at the cost that you promised to do it, you will be in the top 5% of whatever industry you're in. Could be podcasting, could be collecting garbage, could be running a law firm. Very few people do what they say they're going to do when we're just unreliable. The definition of being a great dad is being there for your kids. It's being dependable. You don't have to be perfect, just be dependable.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gough Jr. and Drew Soleyn. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
What is up, everybody? It is Ed Gough Jr. of Dad Central and the Dad Central Show. And on my other side,
Drew Soleyn of Dad Central and the Dad Central Show. What's going on, Ed?
Well, you know what? Where we are in, I guess, Greater Toronto area, definitely fall is hit. When we're recording this, it's like the first few days of fall and there's a coolness in the air, but the weather's been fantastic and just enjoying life and enjoying all the transitionals that fathers are going through now, a few weeks into school, them settling into the routine, sort of the educational school routine. You know, how about you?
Good. I'm on parental leave. So with Eliana, she's pretty young. She's just turned 5 months. And, you know, we're having this interesting dynamic between Kristen and I, where I'm pushing on, maybe we shouldn't be so immediately responsive, because Kristen's amazing. She responds right away to Eliana. She makes a noise. It's like Kristen's like right there. She's like magical. And I'm like, do we need to respond that quick? And so it's interesting because I think we're going to talk about this with our guest at some point today in terms of being responsive. So it's funny because what I read from his book made me think she's doing it right and I'm doing it wrong. So I've been corrected today, and we haven't even had the conversation with our guest. So anyways, that's kind of what's going on. It's been interesting. So
all right. Well, before we go any further, as always, I like to say the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. Absolutely. So Drew, honors to bring up our friend for today.
Yeah, today we are speaking with, and I hope I get this right, William Vanderbloemen. He's been leading the Vanderbloemen Search Group for 15 years, where they're regularly retained to identify the best talent for teams, manage succession planning, and consult on all issues regarding teams. This year, they're going to complete their 3,000th executive search. It's kind of like you. You've had 4,000 online conversations. They've had 3,000 executives.
They're catching up.
Yeah. So
I'm slacking. But he wants to get into podcasts, so I'm still a little bit ahead of him in that area anyways.
Yeah. So prior to founding Vanderbloemen Search Group, William studied executive search under a mentor. We know about mentors, with 25 plus years of executive search at the highest level. So his learning taught him the very best corporate practices, including the search strategies used by the international firm Russell Reynolds. So part of that, William served as senior pastor at one of the largest Presbyterian churches in the United States. And he's a dad to 7 children. So, William, welcome to the show.
Before you bring him up, I got to congratulate you. You know what?
Oh.
And he smiled too. You got his last name right. Let's bring him up now.
Well, I should hope so. So, William, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be with you. Appreciate you having me.
Now, so William, before we get started, how many people get your last name right on the first try?
So short story. My mother's dad, maternal grandfather, had all girls, and he used to take the 3 girls and their husbands on a trip to Europe every 2 or 3 years, something like that. And whatever country they went to, he would assign somebody to plan the meal. So they went to the Netherlands, where, Vanderbloemen, dad ends up in charge. So he calls, this is before anything online, no Yelp or, anything like that. He calls this restaurant, finds a good one. I'd like a table for 8 in the name of beach. And they said, I'm sorry, sir, we only do tables of 4. So it's fine. Give me 2 tables of 4, one in the name of beach, one in the name of Vanderbloemen. And they said, excellent, we'll do that. Can you spell that for me? And he said, sure. Vanderer. And they said, no, 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 no. Spell beach.
Nice.
Oh, and this is the way William is, folks, because before we started recording this, he was already joking away. So I'm looking forward to this. Drew, I think we need to, we'll still have some laughter, but I think we want to get into some more serious conversation. Eh?
Well, we don't have to. I think he's got a sense of humor.
We'll never get this. We'll be on for hours. So.
Well, he's got 7 kids, so he needs to have a sense of humor. Let alone who knows what else they're doing as far as they get executive search and all that.
Drew, I tell people, my wife, she won't leave me alone. I say, baby, I am not a piece of meat, but
sounds like a tough problem to have.
She's gonna kill me for saying that.
I was gonna say, when are we bringing her on the show to hear both sides of the story?
Okay, Drew, let's get started.
This is great. Really appreciate it. Just the opportunity to have this conversation. I think your years of experience, your insight, but being a dad to 7, there's a lot. Obviously, it stands out to me. So we don't have to hang on that too much right now. But we'd love to start the show by getting a little bit of background on what life was like for William growing up, and how that may have led you to where you are today. So what's the early years for William like?
Well, the longer I'm a dad, the more amazed I am any kids turn out well. It is such a work in process, and you don't really get a manual. You just show up with this baby and you're supposed to know what to do. I also think it's kind of designed as a need to know basis. I think if you knew what you were really getting into, you might have second thought, but you start with a little baby that sleeps a lot and it gets more complicated. I'm kidding. It's been the joy of my life. And I think back on my dad, and it's interesting. I think pendulums swing in the way people parent. And so I think my parents, both of them, had a good heart, had good intentions, and they were raised by people that came through the Depression and World War II. And, my granddad did flamethrowers in Okinawa when he was 17 years old. Yeah. So he came back, and was pretty high control. Like, life is fragile, So I think that whole generation, it was a pretty high control parenting experience. That's a generalization, but I think that's certainly true of my 2 parents and how they grew up. And I think that either subconsciously or consciously led them to just kind of let me do my own thinking. And that had a backside. There were a lot of things I had to go figure out on my own that I would have loved to have heard from my dad. And I've tried to learn from that so I can adjust to my own parenting. But the positive side is they always gave me the tools to go figure something out and then task me with figuring it out. And they also, one of the most powerful lessons I think I took away from their parenting was I never had an allowance, right? But if I wanted work, they would always help me find work. So I had to learn 2 lessons from those 2 things. One, if there's something I need to figure out, I need to go get a book, read it, and figure it out. And 2, if you want to have resources in this world, you got to work hard. So it was, that led to my first job. I think I was 6 years old. Yeah, my grandmother said, "Can you come over and polish my silver?" I think mainly to give my mother a break from me. I finished, and she gave me some money, and I just looked at it. I was like, "Wow!" And I said, "Do you have other friends with silver?" And off we went. And then I was the paper boy. I didn't get instruction to go do that, but I figured that out. And actually, it's a long story, but bought out the routes around me and redistributed them in a way that was more efficient and kept the part I wanted. And so it was a lot of figure it out on your own. I remember my dad saying to me, "Why do you ask me a question that you already know the answer to?" And, there's a shadow side to that, like probably wouldn't do so laissez-faire parenting, but there was a real strength to it. It built some resilience in me. I don't know that I could have started a business from scratch without those early lessons.
Wow. Anything else from your dad that you've carried on, you carry on as a man or as a father today? Anything you've inherited from him?
Oh, wow. Probably a lot of dysfunctional things that I inherited, but he was pretty steadfast in being present, and I've tried to build on that. So yeah.
Nice. Drew?
Yeah, being present, certainly a very great takeaway, and very relevant, I would imagine, for a lot of dads in the distracted age that we're in. But you talked about, tongue in cheek, you just handed a baby and you kind of got to go with it. But I'd love to actually ask about your experience now becoming a father. So as you were about to become a dad for the first time, what were the things that came up for you? Any fears, any hopes, any challenges? And then how did you manage them when they did come up?
It happened fast. I got married too young. We started a family too soon. And I don't know if you guys ever go through milestones in life where you go, oh, are we really doing this? Am I really turning 30 or 40 or whatever the number is? And it just sort of happens. You go, wow, I guess we are. That was kind of it. It was a total figure it out as you go. I mean, back then it was the beginning of the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And so we were reading all these things and learning, and no internet, and out comes this baby. And at the time, my wife was a student at a school in a city not where we were. So I took our firstborn to class with me. He was, I was at Princeton and he was in the baby carrier, and, hoping he'd stay quiet during the lecture. It was a total figure it out as you go. And, with 7 kids, I can tell you what, if you've seen one kid, you've seen about one kid.
I like that.
Ours are all so different, and their needs and the way to communicate with them. And I'm still just trying to figure it out.
William, I can't let go of this. You were taking your firstborn to classes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give some reflection on that?
Don't do that.
Jesus. But
I mean, really,
but especially at that time, it may be a little bit different now as we're talking 2023, but back then,
it was pretty weird, to be honest. It was really weird, and that's a whole nother set of podcasts we can go through. But our current family is a blended family. I went through a divorce about 17 years ago. I would not recommend that. You can put that in the show notes.
Okay.
But it's something where there was fault on both sides, nothing the tabloids would have wanted to pay any attention to. And coming out of that, one of the things I realized that was my fault in this was getting married too early, and getting married to someone that I'm like, once they change, it's going to be great. You should never, right? But too young, and I would not recommend it. You don't. If you're in a position where you're having to take your baby to class, there's something really wrong. And I had gracious professors, but my wife and I've spent a good bit of time, because we've raised all 7 of these. She had 2, I had 4, and then we have 1 together. And we have told our kids, don't marry a project, marry a person, preferably a partner, and don't rush into it. And so our oldest is going to turn 30 in about a month. And I think we might have overcooked that lesson. He's still not engaged, and I'm waiting on grandchildren. So I am just figuring it out.
Drew?
Yeah, there's a lot that I really appreciate about what you're sharing, and obviously it sounds like a very challenging experience, but you have tried to work very well in the follow up to learn the lessons, figure it out, and then translate that into your current blended family. But there's something that's underlying all of this that I know you've talked about it, and it's this idea or willingness to, I guess, do the work. Like dig in, figure it out. There's challenges, there's things that come up, and that mentality. I think that from the time when you were when you were 6. I love the story where your grandmother, you polished your silverware, and your first response when you saw the money was, "Do you have more friends?" Because you automatically started to look for opportunity, look for what's next, since you have this positive return. I'd say. So, can you talk about the importance of maybe that characteristic in when it comes to fatherhood or being a dad, and how that's helped you?
Well, I can tell you what I've been working on the most, and that's trying to develop my sense of self-awareness. We'll get to it in a little bit when we talk about the book, but there are habits that the most successful people I've ever met have. And they're not unlearnable habits, but the one that's the rarest that you only see in the best of the best is true self-awareness. Most people think they're self-aware, most people aren't. And I can speak to that like with data and stuff if you want. But I think the beginning of knowing how to parent my children is for me to know what are my strengths and my weaknesses, where am I prone to step on a toe or not, and how I may think I sound one way, but it comes out another. So I think working on self-awareness is really the hard part of the work you have to do to be able to be a good dad. And then, always looking for the opportunity. I don't know, it might be dysfunctional. I'm just a sold out optimist. There's always an opportunity. It's never a problem. Always opportunities.
I know a lot of stuff for you is leadership. Share with our audience the relationship from your lens of leadership and fatherhood, especially raising 7 kids. There has to be some leadership that's involved in that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I've learned, there's a couple things. I mean, 7 kids is a very different thing. My wife's the most organized person on the planet. Like our house runs somewhat like a military base. Kitchen's open, kitchen's closed. Don't get, you want anything you want from the grocery store, put it on the list, and we go shopping on Monday morning. If you don't get it on the list, you're gonna have to wait till next week. So you better check that toilet paper. Because so and what that really is about, Ed, is her ability to maintain boundaries and systems. And I think with a bunch of kids, that's the only way to be fair and equitable, is to have some things that are just that way for everybody, me included, right? But I think that one thing that I'm learning about having this many children that I just keep going, wow, it's really is. If you've seen one kid, you've seen one kid, and they're all so incredibly different. So I have to manage like down to, I've got one that if they call me, if I don't have 20 minutes to talk to them, they're going to feel like I cut them off. So I'd rather just not take the call if I don't have the 20 minutes and then get back to them when I do, rather than jump on a call for 5 minutes and have to go. And that's that. So I learning each of them individually, learning me individually so we can interact well. And that changes with time. One of the great lessons that I have learned from my wife is the ability to change the relationship as the child matures. And so that means, as they hit 18, we have a different relationship now. Like you're a legal adult, you can do whatever you want. For instance, with college, it's like, we're cheering for you. We're your best supporter. We want to help you. And if you feel like you want to go to college, let's talk about that. We're glad to listen and invest in that, like an investor. And then twice a year, after every semester, you need to give us a report so we can see the return on our investment. And by the way, the investment ends after 4 years. So, that maybe sounds a little harsh, but that's just one example of how we have tried, for right or wrong, to shift the relationship as the children get older. It never dawned on me that, assuming people stay healthy, most men will have a much longer relationship with their children as adults than they did as children.
Yeah.
So like launching them a little bit at a time. What's the old saying? Parenting is the daily art of learning to let go. Like every day, just a little bit more, so that they're ready and functioning, contributing adults when they hit the ground running.
So, Drew?
Well, William, one of the things that you talked about was self-awareness and, the importance of that skill. Was there a moment or a story that you jumped out where you said, wow, I really need to grow in this area as a dad? And if so, would you share that with us?
Yeah. So in my training to be a pastor, it was in the Presbyterian system, which is incredibly thorough. I had to do, while I was at Princeton, a summer-long chaplaincy. And part of the requirement of the chaplaincy was that I want to say it was 15 hours a week of group and individual counseling, partly so you could learn the trade, but also so you could maybe get your eyes open. And I kind of got my butt handed to me. I was not a very likable guy and thought I was, and just learned a lot about the places that I need to try and wake up and be a little more self-aware. And I can't say that, it's just been up and to the right in personal growth all those years, but it certainly is a time. You say, is there a time when you kind of got your bell rung? That'd be it.
Okay. Ed, back over to you.
Yeah. How do you handle, as a dad now, getting your bell rung compared to when you had your first child and getting your bell rung, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't know that it gets any different.
Okay.
We're dealing with some stuff right now with one of our kids. It's brand new for us. Fortunately, it's not, some kind of substance or alcohol issue, but,
right.
but it's a set of issues we've not dealt with before. It's like, wow, you're just always learning at this. And I do think, I think the problems or the times your bell gets rung when you have little kids, it's probably more frequent and less loud. And as they get older, they have fewer issues, but they're a lot bigger issues.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs, but not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
One of the challenges you have experienced is blending a family, and now, of course, you have together your own child, and so there's an interesting dynamic there. Is there a lesson that you've learned in going through that process that you might share with other dads who are maybe experiencing the blended family scenario?
Yeah, counseling works. So I would not have said that. Remember my parenthood lesson, go figure it out on your own.
Right.
That's what I was ingrained into me.
Mm-hmm.
And counseling is basically going to somebody and saying, I can't figure this out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And we both went through quite a bit of that before we got married. And then after we got married, like, how do we blend? Then the other thing, and I don't want to step on toes, but this is my story. Okay. So in my story, blending a family, prayer works.
Mhm.
So, I do a whole episode on that, but yeah, I'd say the hard tactile work of doing some counseling and making sure you pray. And those are the two things that, because of all the issues we've had, the whole blending thing really has not been one.
Okay.
Mm.
So it's just, and maybe they were young. I don't know. Maybe there's just so many people that it's interesting. The more kids you have, the less each one of them has the ability to grab the spotlight.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it does solve some of the blending problems when you just got two kids and you love her more than you love me and all those kind of things that, I hear people say happen.
You mentioned about the counseling piece. In your fatherhood journey, have there been other fathers that have been supportive with
Oh.
you at all?
Totally. Oh, anytime I find a good one, I lean into them. And here's the question I ask them. If you find a really good dad that's farther down the road than you, and, their parenting was in a different day and generation, so maybe it doesn't all apply, but I'm yet to meet an older, wiser person who won't answer this question. Hey, Ed, you're an old, wise dad. You've been at this a long time. What do you wish you would have known when you were my age?
Bam.
And everyone wants to answer that. Let me save you some stupid tax. Let me help you not do what I did. And it gets past the see, I think people maybe listen to you when you're talking about your successes, but they never forget it when you talk about your failures. And when you ask somebody that question, what do you wish you would have known when you're my age? You'd be like, well, let me tell you what I didn't know. It's amazing.
It's a powerful question. Yeah, I can relate to that. Recently, long story short, I was with a gentleman who's been married 50 years to the same lady and has kids. And he has about 45 minutes from where I live. He has a 200-acre farm.
Wow.
And he's owned it since 1977 and was out there with a group of people. I said, hey, do you mind just driving me around the farm? And he spent like 45 minutes just driving around the farm. And before we stopped, he said, you've been married 50 years. You've been a parent for 50 years. Can you give me some lessons learned? And the stuff he shared in about 5 minutes, invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Invaluable. It was like really special moment. Very powerful message that he sent in me. And I'm going to be sure I'll share it with others. So I agree with you. Getting those elders who've been through it, who've lived it. Yeah, maybe in a bit different time, but a lot of the core principles are still applicable today. Drew, back to you.
Well, and a lot of it you don't learn until you've done it.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? Why is it that wisdom is wasted on the old and youth wasted on the young?
Mm. Yeah.
Done deal.
That one's deep. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why we love having these conversations, to talk to dads who have gone through different scenarios, different challenges, and hopefully the wisdom that you're sharing in the process can add value for anyone who's listening. And you, with your experience and now with your upcoming book, are sharing critical skills that are going to help people be successful. And I think one of the skills we haven't talked about, but I referenced at the beginning, was this idea of being very responsive. You want to talk a little bit about that and how you've seen that principle come into your life as a dad, or just in general?
Can I give you a little backstory on why I might know a thing about it? I've always wondered, have you guys ever met somebody and within like 5 minutes, they're a winner?
Yep.
It's happened to me at dinner parties. It's happened at big social gatherings, happened in job interviews, but that one's special. I don't know why. And it's not common. It's just every now and then you meet somebody like that. I've always asked myself, I wonder if you could learn what makes them that likable that fast. And could you bottle that, right? So during the pandemic, when everything shut down and nobody's hiring, we had some extra time. And we realized when we do a search, we have maybe 1,000 people we consider, and then it gets down to 150 or so. And then you do phone screens and Zooms and all that. You get down to the 8, maybe most talented people, and they get a face-to-face long format interview. Okay. So during the pandemic, we realized those face-to-face long format interviews, we've now done 30,000 of those. And we've tracked, where are these people? How are they doing? And so we asked the question, could we figure out of those 30,000, which are already the best people we've ever met, who were the best of those 30,000? And we figured it out, who got the job, stayed in the job, flourished, got promoted, all these things. And then we said, okay, do they have anything in common? These mythically crazy, likable, talented people, the people that you sit down with in 5 minutes, and the answer was, yes, they do have some things in common. And it was nothing like I thought it would be. I thought it would be, oh, they all have an IQ of 170, or they all, have fabulous hair and shiny teeth, or they're all over 6 feet tall, or what. There's none of that. It was 12 very simple interpersonal habits that they all showed. And that's what drove us to this book idea. It's called Be the Unicorn, 12 data-driven habits that separate the best leaders from the rest. And so we look at each of these habits. And the habit list was also pretty stunning. None of them were super, black magic arts. It was like basic interactions with humans. One of them was, we called them the unicorns because they're these really rare find of a person. They are consistently maniacal about getting back to people quickly. And the thing about each one of these habits, which is really interesting, is very common among the unicorns, incredibly uncommon among nearly everybody else. Most people don't get back to people. They just don't. And in the book, we walk through all this data about, think about a sales cycle at work. If you get back to a prospect right after they reach out to you, you can almost always count on getting in touch with them. If you wait even a day, you might never hear from them again. And even with that data, most salespeople wait 2 days to get back to somebody. Give me a break. I don't know. You probably have to talk to a psychiatrist or a counselor or somebody. If the baby's crying and it's 5 weeks old, do you run in there and see what's wrong? Is that responsive or is that codependent? That's two different things, right? But how many stories have we heard of child calls dad for advice? Let me get back to you. Time goes on. You got to provide for family. You're working, you're traveling, you forget about it. There's just books and movies about dads not getting back to their kids. So I don't know how it works when you're trying to stop the crying and sleep through the night part. That might be a little different. But I think I know my dad could have responded to me quicker, and I know I fail at this every now and then. But the unicorns, the people who really stand out in the crowd, are significantly focused on getting back to people quickly with a personal response. And I think, my prediction with each of these habits, as the world starts to get more and more automated and there's more and more AI, these are going to be gold. They're going to be the new gold standard. And for parents particularly, because, now I was reading a study not too long ago about the difference, the diminished influence parents have over their children right now, mainly because of social media. So you used to be, you had your kid and you did all the formation. And then when they were playing a sport, they were with their friends, or maybe you had an extra phone line and they got to get on the phone every now and then. Right now, teenagers particularly are constantly in touch with their peers at a level of access that's never happened and a frequency that's never happened. And that means instead of talking to mom and dad about things, they go to their peers to say, what's right or wrong? What should I wear? What should I look like? And that's not a really great equation. So dads out there, if you can think about, if I respond a little quicker, if I work on each of these 12 habits, I'm going to have a better relationship with my kids. And right now it's not just, does mom have more influence or dad? It's how many of the peer group have more influence than both of you put together. So I think these interpersonal skills or these habits could be really critical to dads as the world just gets noisier for their kids.
Yeah, a lot of tremendous value in there. And yes, I tongue in cheek of talking about the response with, Eliana, she's 5 months old. But there is certainly an element. I remember I started with twins, and even when I'd hear them from the other room, I would at least use my voice, say, "Hey, I hear you," or, you're talking, or whatever it is, so that they know that there's some response in that respect. So I would say the value of responsiveness can go for any age and stage, but your point about the peer orientation and the importance of the relationship that a parent has with their child as a protective factor, because really the devices that people are on, they get access, TikTok and all these other things, and that's where they're getting their information. And I think that it is an important element that if you have the relationship, that they can maybe hear that information and consume, because they're still going to, but they can come to you and vet that information. Or you have the opportunity, the relationship, to relate to them and ask questions about what it is they're learning, or what were you thinking about as far as the decision you made, if you have the relationship intact. And that does start, I think, right from the beginning, in being responsive in a way that builds a positive relationship with the kids. So I think definitely very important. But in terms of other, let's say, skills, or the 12 habits, which one would be you think is very applicable, transferable to the experience?
So not to sound repetitive, but self-awareness. And here's why I say that. So of the 12 habits, like we identified the 30,000 and then the best, and we studied, and we get 12 habits. And then once we had it down to those 12, we surveyed 250,000 people about the 12. We had a psychologist come in and help us design the survey. We had data analytics people help us. So we did it. I think we did it right. And of the 12 habits, the least common of the 12 is self-awareness. Okay. And one of the highest misperceptions. What do I mean? We ask people, would you rate yourself better than average at each of the habits, right? Self-awareness, like 89% of everyone said they're better than average. You like have a applied math degree or anything, but I'm pretty sure 89% of any group is not better than average. Average is 50%. So like it's the least common habit, and it's the one everybody thinks they're just killing. So, Socrates, he didn't get quoted with much. There was a lot of oral tradition, but the one thing that people agree that he said was his most powerful lesson was know yourself. And, when growing up, listening to Bible stories, you hear Jesus say, well, before you get that splinter out of your friend's eye, get the log out of your own. I used to think he was just saying, don't judge people. But I think nowadays, what I think he was saying was, why don't you get to know yourself and the stuff you need to work on with you? And then we'll worry about some other people. So self-awareness is one. And that's why this is going to sound awful. Y'all are never going to have me back on the show. It's been fun. Great to meet you all. But this is going to sound self-promoting, but we're kind of geeky or nerdy. And we got this survey and we're like, oh, wow, we can do better than this. We can give people a way to figure out how to get better. And so we built a software tool. It's called the Vander Index. And it's a software tool that lets you take an inventory to see how do you perceive yourself. And then it shows how that measures against the normal population and against the unicorns. And we got, several thousand that have already gone through the index. So you get a good baseline against other people who've taken it. We've even had families take it together. So the kids say, Dad, here's where I think you're strong and where you're not. And the dad says, here's where I think I'm strong. Almost like a 360 at work. And it really opens up good communication. But more than anything, it just lets you know, where am I good? Where do I need to work? And I think that could give a dad a roadmap toward getting better.
Well, that is actually leading into my next question is, can you maybe add on to that in terms of how would you grow in self-awareness, knowing that many of us are delusional about our own actual self-awareness?
Yeah, just stare in a mirror for a really long time.
Like look at the mirror and stare at myself, wonder if that's really me on the shelf, so to speak.
Exactly. You can use a 4K camera and record yourself and then play it back. And then you really know how old you are.
That's true. You get a lot of visual feedback from that.
That's right. No, I think it is. Some of it, some easy steps are, I'm a big believer in inventories, like, whether it's Enneagram, DISC, Berkman, Myers-Briggs, Vander Index, anything that can teach you about yourself so you know how you're wired and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And boy, is that helpful when both parents can do that and see where do we complement one another and where do we not. I mean, tremendous help. But the book, we didn't design it to be a dissertation about brain surgery. It's pretty straightforward. Here's a case study of this habit. Here's what we learned from the unicorns we interviewed about this habit. Here's how you apply it to your life and get better. It's just very, it is, you could read it, one chapter a day for 12 days and work on each habit. You could do it one habit a month. Or if you just want to read the book, you can read it on an airplane. It's not super complicated. It's just a question of whether people will actually do it. I don't know if you guys have ever bought the treadmill and never gone running, but I think a lot of dads aren't. Oh, I have a friend, not me, but I have a friend. Naming these habits won't do men any good, but getting in there and doing the work. We're actually going to have a workbook come out next year so groups can study, but it's just applying the learning. And the cool thing is, it is learning. It's not William's opinion about what 12 things people do. It's like, no, there is data behind. If you do these 12 things, you will succeed.
I have a quick question for you. You have seen data on hundreds and thousands of people. What do you see, if anything, in regards to fathers at this time through this data? If there's anything that resonates with men and fathers at this time, because especially when it comes to employment, we're in a changing time.
Yeah. I think what, when you talk about responsiveness and how few people actually do it, you can run through all these habits. Like, that's just how you're supposed to treat each other. I think what the data revealed to me is we as people are pretty unreliable. We're just, we don't keep our word. And, I've got all these kids, and we've got 3 of them in the work world. One's a college senior, one's a high school senior. So there's all this, what am I going to do with my life kind of questions that come up in our house. And I've said to the kids, we could spend a lot of time parked here, but I've said, look, if you can find the right kind of job, and we've got a little matrix for doing that, and I'm glad to share it if that's helpful. But once you find the kind of job you're going to do and you get into the job, let me tell you this: if you do what you say you're going to do, when you said you're going to do it, at the cost that you promised to do it, you will be in the top 5% of whatever industry you're in. Could be podcasting, could be collecting garbage, could be running a law firm. Very few people do what they say they're going to do we're just unreliable. So, the definition of being a great dad is being there for your kids. It's being dependable. You don't have to be perfect, just be dependable.
I love that message, Drew, that William's sharing, and just being the reliable and accountability, not only to yourself, but to your kids, because dad and fathers have to realize what you set up for your kids is a lot of times what they're going to duplicate.
That's right. It will happen again. That's like written down somewhere. I can probably quote it, but it will happen again. And it's what do you want to happen again?
Good question. Drew?
Yeah, well, for me, great insights, great wisdom. And I think that last note is a great one to end off on. So why don't you tell people where they can find out more and about the book, about the Vander Index?
Yeah, sure. The easiest place to go to see everything about the book, the Vander Index, and some resources and such is theunicornbook.com. However, if you run a team in your career at any way, shape, or form, you might go to our main site. There's 3,500 free resources on there about how you build and run and keep a great team. And it's just vanderbloemen.com. You're like, William, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, wait. I used to hate my name, but the SEO guys, the search engine guys, figured out that my last name is so messed up. You can misspell it into Google any way you want. And it'll go right back to vanderbloemen.com. So maybe that'll help some people.
Good stuff. Well, we want to thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule. First of all, being a father, also being a leader, not only to your family, but to many other people around the world. And we're here for any support that we can provide you, present and future. And we look forward to hearing more. And maybe you need to do a separate book on the fatherhood comedy. I think that would be a good, I think there's either a reality series or a book there that's in the making. Do you have any final words for our Dad Central family?
No, just thanks for, doing your best. If you're listening to this, you're trying to get better as a dad, and none of us have it all together. So I just keep on keeping on, and if we can help you in any way, we're glad to.
Thank you so
That's great.
much. Remember to give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And thanks again.
Yes, thank you, William.
Have a great day. All right, Drew, another great conversation.
Yeah, that last point I think is a really crucial one, because I know the word wasn't brought up, but the word that stands out to me is trust. William said that
Mhm.
we're just generally as people, we're unreliable. And I think that between a parent and a child, one of the most important things in any relationship is the ability to develop trust. And I would encourage dads that, if you're finding yourself in these situations where you're probably maybe on a declining curve as far as the trust aspect with your children, to really look at the self-awareness, how can you make that an inclining curve, that you're building more trust than you're tearing down, because that's going to be that protective factor that's going to help develop that relationship where when they call on you, they know that you're going to be there. So I think that's a real powerful takeaway, and one that I want to take to heart and make sure that I'm checking in with all my kids that I'm building trust as opposed to tearing it down.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what you just said there, and maybe a challenge to dads. No matter what age your child or children are, ask them, do you trust me? Doesn't matter what age. They could be 4 weeks, they could be 40, they could be 50. Do you trust me? That's really important. And the word is your bond. Like, where were as adults, there was a time, and I'm sure we can relate, that a handshake was good. Can you do that handshake with your child or children, and they know you're going to be there, right? Like, it's is it under promise and over deliver with your children if you can.
Or be reliable.
There you
Like
go.
William said, be reliable.
Absolutely. So, as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Plus Care. Dove Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. Hey, we want you to reach out to us. So, first you can do is email us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. Also, listen and watch replays of these epic conversations and give us feedback and tell other people about it. And finally, we don't have probably as many resources as William does, but we have them on fathers. And you can check out our website, because there's a lot of free resources at dadcentral.ca. So as always, to dads and fathers and those that love them, remember to give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll see you soon.